Hi, I'm Craig Phillips. In this video, I'm going to show you how to prepare and paint this wooden panelling. Now, you may already have wooden panelling at home that dates back to the Victorian and Georgian days, which probably could have been painted or varnished many a times. If that is the case, your starting preparation is going to have to be cleaning. So mix yourself up some sugar soap, which is fantastic for cleaning a variety of different surfaces. Scrub this down with a sponge and a scrubbing brush, rinse it off, dry it, and then you're ready. Or you may have new materials like mine, which is an MDF background and a wooden pattern all the way around it. However, it still needs preparing. Therefore, my first stage is to protect the surfaces around by putting your dust sheets down on the floor and masking up the walls above. Next is the sanding. Now, with my materials being new, I'm going to use a very light sandpaper, about a 240 grit or a soft sanding pad. Now, if your existing paneling has been painted or varnished, you will still need to sand this down, but using a more coarse sandpaper. This will help the new materials key to it. Either way, brush off all dust or vacuum it up before continuing. And always remember to use a good dust mask and keep all doors and windows open if possible. So now your areas are clean and sanded, you can inspect them closer to see if any areas need filling, like screw or nail heads, or any gaps between the timbers where they meet. There's various different fillers you can use to fill the gaps. When applying this, make sure it stands proud a little bit, and once it's dry, you can sand it down flush. Now, once you've applied some filler over the knots, the deep areas and some of the joints there, when you look closely to your timber, where this timber has been mounted on top of the backboard here, you may get some gaps. Even in your existing panelling, it might be cracked. So these gaps here can range anything from 1-2 millimeters, and then it goes all the way up there, and then there is no gaps at all. So what I prefer is a polymer sealant as opposed to a normal caulk, and I run this all the way around the whole square, smooth it off with my finger, and then it's ready to paint once it's dry, of course, and you get a nice consistency of your paint traveling through the two different materials. In fact, it looks like it's all part of one. Now, it is advisable to use a flexible filler, but whatever brand that you use, make sure it's not a silicone based and you are able to paint it once dry. Now the wood filler is dry, it's time to sand it, but don't forget your dust mask. Once finished, again, remove any dust using a brush or a vacuum cleaner. Now, the next stage is to apply some finishing coat on the bare wood and the new surfaces as well. Of course, I've got MDF here and pine wood, which will still be quite porous when it's had no primer or anything on there. So this is perfect for applying a couple of coats on before you actually paint it, and it stops the different colours kind of flashing through your first coat of paint. If at home your area is already painted and you've just cleaned and sanded it down and you've had to do some filling, like I've done around these edges or in sections like this, you can still apply the finishing coat over them porous areas before you start painting. One of the benefits of using finishing coat is that it stops moisture from the paint absorbing into the new wood and MDF. This makes for a much smoother finish. Now, it may look like I'm a bit slapdash popping this on, because of course I've got the roller putting it on like this, left, right and up and down, just to spread it on quicker, and then I'm feathering out with the brush. But each time I do feather it out, I am going with the grain of the wood on the underside lip there and then dragging it down the sides. The grain comes down here. That's after I've already gone through the centre there, and that way I'm spreading the finishing coat as even as possible, but I'm not allowing any build up in the corners in here, because although it's thinner and it really absorbs into it and dries quite clear, you've still got to treat it like a paint. You're applying on a liquid with the paintbrush, so you don't want any drips on there, and you do want to get it as even as possible. But you can just see the difference now in the colour where that is penetrating into there, but I'm going over and over these corner edges to avoid any runs. Now my first layer of finishing coat is dry, I'm going to apply a second coat, but first I'm going to give it a gentle tittle with a light sanding pad. Now I'm going to be using two different types of paint. The colour first of all is moleskin, both being the same colour. However, the larger tin is the chalk wall paint, which I'm going to be painting the MDF areas, and then the trim paint will be on the pine areas. However, my first coat, I'm just going to apply the chalk wall paint across the whole lot as it'll be quicker. Frenchic chalk wall paint is velvety, luxurious and practical. It's water-based with an ultra-matte finish that gives you excellent coverage. This revolutionary product is durable, breathable and totally scrubbable with minimum VOCs and virtually no odour. But it's not just for walls, it's also great for ceilings and other internal surfaces such as woodwork, ceramic wall tiles and even wood and concrete floors. Now I've used both the wall and trim paint for two contrasting finishes. However, if you only have one tin available, you could use either paint across both surfaces. So once you've covered the area with your roller, you want to start to, first of all, cutting around these edges here, stabbing your brush into the corner and going along the edges. That way it's going on the timber itself and the MDF. Up to both sides, making sure you're not leaving any areas unpainted. And now I'm going to take the brush to feather it, and it doesn't matter which way you're going on the MDF, whether you're going up and down or left to right on it. We just want to try to make sure it's spread as evenly as possible. And once it's done that, then you take the edge of your brush and go along the pine wood area from corner to corner and not touching the back MDF, and same again up here. And this is going to avoid the paint piling in the actual corners where you don't want it to pile, because that's where it will build up and potentially drip down. And then you can start to paint the outside areas again, using your roller because it is quicker for applying it. But when we come to feather it on the actual pine, we want to go with the grain of the wood. So I've got pieces of timber going straight across here and straight across here, and then small pieces in the middle. So spread the paint out evenly so you're feathering across all the surface like this, and that way you're not getting any build up from off the actual roller. And then again, just going over them edges, and then we'll finish this line here, this one here, because the grain is going that way, and then where the timber goes right across, finish it that way. Now the first layer of chalk wall paint is dry, you can have a good examine of the area itself. Run across it with your hands, seeing if there's any bits that are maybe standing proud, or you might have got some drips in them that you need to sand out. You can also give it a light little tickle just with something really high sandpaper just across the surfaces like that, because there is dust and molecules in the area which will settle on there. And once you've done that and you rub your hand over it, you can actually feel the difference in there. It's also wise to check the areas where you filled in over the nail and screw holes. Now I'm ready for my second coat, but this time I'm going to be applying the moleskin, again the chalk wall paint, using my handheld paint spray. That is the chalk wall paint now complete. 3 full coats across both the MDF and the pine wood itself. The first coat was applied on with the roller and feathered out with the paintbrush. This was left for about 3 hours before we applied a second coat using a handheld paint sprayer. I sprayed it up and down from top to bottom, right the way across the wall, left it for about 1 hour, and then applied a second coat going left to right. So 3 solid coats now. It's at about 3.5 to 4 hours to dry. If it was a flat, smooth surface, you can recoat it in about 2 hours, but because of the detail on here, I've left it that little bit longer. But the next stage is Frenchic's trim paint. So as you can see, this is the moleskin, the same colour. However, it's not going to dry ultra matte like the chalk wall paint. it'll have more of a satin feel to it. Frenchic trim paint has a lovely, subtle satin sheen finish that's perfect for skirting boards, doors and radiators. It also works fantastically when it's used in its own right as a satin furniture paint. Now for the cutting in, this is going to be a lot slower of course, so you will need a more finer paintbrush like this. This is 50mm wide, or you can even use a smaller one at about 30mm if you need it. Get your paint on the edge of your brush, and then when you start to cutting along the edges there, just press your brush in so it kind of bends the bristles that little bit and it strikes a more cleaner line. What you don't want to be doing is getting this trim paint on this back bit here, because you're going to see the difference. This is going to dry a little bit more satin effect, where this ultra matte on there would be noticeable if they crossed. So you just strike that line all the way into that corner, and hopefully if you've done your filling across there nice and neat, you should be able to get a nice neat straight line. And then of course you just go over the top areas like this. It's something that will take your time and you will have to keep going back over it, but be careful that you don't overwork the paint and start to drag it off, because it dries quite quickly, especially when it's penetrating into the chalk wall paint. Now the first coat might again look a little bit patchy when it's going on there, because it is penetrating through the base layer that we put on, which was the wall paint. But once you've applied a second coat or even a third coat on there, this will look a lot more solid then, and kind of a nice buffed satin finish on there, where this will always stay more matte. The first layer of trim paint is now complete. It did take me about an hour or so to complete that area. I'm going to leave it for at least 4 hours before applying my second coat. That's my second layer of trim paint now applied, and to be honest, I think it looks fantastic. It's a real good solid finish to it. I'll double check it in about 2 or 3 hours time when it's dry to see if it needs a third one, but if I'm being honest, I think it looks great as it is. So that's how easy it is to prepare and paint your wooden wall panels. If you're looking for more inspiration, check out the Frenchic Fan Forum on Facebook. But if you just want to know more about the vast range of products that Frenchic stock, check out their website, frenchicpaint.co.uk.